arriving, we have to check this decoration of earth, you know, and if there is some people only with temperature on board, you know, the ship is going to anchorage for many hours. Then it was already something like the description, because the ship was alongside only at 12, for example, and not at 8 in the morning, and everything was wrong. Already the media, the French media, was coming in Marseille when one ship was encouraged, and the pressure was increasing, as you can imagine. And because at the same moment already, the Diamond Princess in Japan was still outside with the people dying, starting to be sick, of course, and dying on board. Yeah. If you remember, they spent maybe five weeks, you know, with the 3 weeks at sea, and after they come, of course, alongside. But it was a long drama, you know, and really nightmare, you know, to see that, because as a sailor, of course, I'm a maritime pilot. I was working on passenger ships during 10 years before becoming a pilot, and I imagine the pressure for the captain and the crew to have 3,000 people or 2,000 people on board, really afraid, you know, really scared about this disease, you know. And then in Marseille, we feel, you know, that it was increasing. And after, at the beginning of March, the French authority decided to say, okay, now it's finished. We can accept some repatriement, because they can finish some cruise. If they have some passengers to disembark, we will accept that it's finished. It was maybe the 7th of, between the 7th and the 15th of May. And it was the beginning of our problems, if you want, because, for example, Costa OMS, they have a lot of Spanish passengers or Italian, and for example, Spain said, okay, now it's finished. We don't accept anymore ships. Then even if we have nationals, you know, on board, it's only 400 kilometers between France and Spain in this part of the South Europe of Med. And they were not interested by the nationals. It's incredible it was like this. Then we have to bring back many with buses, and we put a lot of pressure on these French services of the French government. You know, of course, the immigration, they have to check all the passports, etc. They have to check many things for the customs and etc. And in fact, when we have the first ships arriving from US, for example, with COVID, because it was maybe at the end of March, we have already a real experience, you know, of ships going back in Marseille with all this service involved. But the French authority, they said, okay, we don't accept any more ships now, because we consider that most important to have it was the same in Miami at the same moment, to have our sanitary system open from the people from my side, for the French citizen, and not we don't fill up with this hospital with foreigners, with people, because there is 2,000 or 3,000 people, passengers pax on board. Then they call this the capacity of the preservation of the sanitary capacity. And unfortunately, it calls with this kind of repatriaments. And of course, it was a battle each time, first with the prime minister in Paris, or even sometime directly with what we call Élysée in France, the French presidents, to find solution. And after, when we have convened this French government, we have to convene the local authorities. And we have some moments was very difficult, because we have some ships on board on the terminal, they accept, but there is some COVID on board. And therefore they wanted a special corridor, sanitary corridor. They want to test all the passengers, etc. Then it was really difficult at this moment. And I say, why we have to accept this? And for example, in Spain, they don't open for any shift. In Italy, just the minimum. And it was very difficult, you know, be unbalanced, you know, between these three great countries of Europe in med, you know, very touristical, very with a great democracy. And a lot of people forget that there is two rules in shipping for many centuries. You accept, of course, there is something like we can call confidence. Of course, there is the ships with flags. You accept in your port. If there is any problem, you have to be in charge about the crew. You can of course not accept to disembark some cargoes, but for the crew or the passengers, there is some laws, and they are really different, you know, and they are very clear. At the moment one ship arriving in your port, you have to of course take all the measure, you know, to be clear for the population, but you have to accept them, you have to confine them in the hospital if you need, etc., etc. And of course, as we see in the last months, very few countries in the world accept, you know, only if you realize only the problem was with the maritime industry. Because at the same moment, in France, for example, we bring back exactly 6,500 packs from the sea in Marseille. But at the same moment, exactly 160,000 people come back to Paris by airplanes, and nobody asks anything to these people. You know, they can arrive in Paris, they go back to home, there is nobody in the airport to check the temperature, to ask any tests, etc. And then this discrimination between maritime and but it was the same in the hotel, in the buses, in the train in France, even if you come back to Spain, etc. At this moment. And it was a really nightmare for me as a sailor, of course, at one part of our industry, you know, as this member of this big industry, big market, big family, to see that there is a very special treatment, you know, for industry. It's very strange, because it's one part of the history. There is, at this moment, there is no more risk with some people coming by the sea, because even when the ships were free from you know, COVID, they don't want the ship. They don't. It was incredible for me, because, for example, at the same moment, the German government accept so many French cross from the frontier or Germany in the hospital to save them. And at the same moment, we have small ship from Germany, and they pass in front of Marseille, and they have some calls. There is maybe 300 people, or it was small ships, luxury. We just have to find 5 buses to bring back these people, hold, of course, and maybe very, you know, in Aret, because it was, you know, March or April, and they don't know what's happened, you know, what could happen. And we refused. And I said to many people, it's not normal to make that. The Germans, they accept, they are saving French, and there is some people asking us assistance, and we say no. And then it was very difficult. We were not so much to put pressure, but we do. We were not so bad, because of course many countries are closed at this moment, and we make a great job. Not enough for me, but for them of confinement. Then what can I say now? It was a very original experience, you know, to measure what was the interest of the government, you know, in France, in Germany, or in Spain, everywhere, in Greece, of course, about our maritime industry, you know. And when you see, even in Miami is the places in the world for the cruise industry, and they close everything, even, of course, the equity, etc. As you say, as we can see the last weeks, you know, there is not so much help for this industry. Maybe there is a lot of reason. Maybe they lose a little, or they have a lack of humility. Maybe the last 20 years, because when you have this kind of growing, especially in the financial market, of 20% or 15% every year, you leave, as we said in France, you leave the ground, I mean, And but there is people, there is humans on board, all passengers sometimes, crew coming from everywhere in the world. And the reality was we need to accept these people, you know, and to find solutions. Marseille is a great city. As I said, we have a big port for many, many years. We have all the services for even, of course, the sanitary services. And there have to be one part of this equation, one part of the services are made for the port. You know, if you have so many people in charge about the fighting of the, for example, the fire inside the port, in case of fire, for the safety, attack terrorists, etc. We have also this capacity to fight against a problem of pandemic. Then what can I say? If you have some question, of course, I will be very happy to answer. Now, for the future, in 2 minutes, and I will finish with that. We try to restart it, and sometime I think we will have the what we say the double pain, because we were very touched, you know, at the beginning without so much support, and now in France, especially in Spain, I see that also there is no dates for nothing. You know, there is only the casino, the nightclubs for the moment, and the cruise. You know, we have no date to restart. You know, we hope that Ponant on the French shore with a very few, only 200 or 300 passengers, that will restart in Juliet. But for the decision we take tomorrow by the French government for our industry. But we have for the moment, we have no idea that if they want to delay and we have for the moment, good news about our future. Of course, we try to make our best, but it will be difficult for the next months. We hope that in October or November for the winter season, we have maybe 2 or 3 ships for a week, and to be ready, of course, in March for the next season. But we have to restart very quickly, and they have the operator. I'm not an operator, of course, but I need to help them. But they have to restart very quickly because they have no money entering. You imagine many people speak about that, but it is a disaster. You know, when you have so much expenses and you don't have any kind of money. Only expense, then it's very difficult for them. Then they cut the investment, of course. Every day you have some ships they want to sell, they want to scrap, but they have to restart very quickly. And I hope that the Caribbean season in October can restart, of course, maybe with only 20%, I don't know, and of the capacity at the beginning, but it's becoming now real priority, you know, because of course European season now we're arriving maybe some ships in August, but very few in Med. We have 4 or 5 ships this summer. We will be very happy. Usually there is, if I remember, 90 or 100 ships, you know, cruising in Med during the hot season. Well, then what I said. If there is some question, of course, it's not very positive, but it's our reality of our market, or the reality of the last 3 months. But I'm still fighting every day, and not as a rock star. The rock star is Ansam, is not me, but a young rock star. I'm an old one. But we have some hopes, of course, for the autumn and for September. And with Costa MSC, it's our major partners, you know, and they are belonging also. They invest a lot, especially in the green in the future, because in Marseille we have a very big project, you know, with the shore connection. We have already with ferries, and in 2 years we have for the cruise ship. We have many opportunities, you know, for this. It's my job, you know, and my hope that for the moment nobody wants to stop this green investment because it's very important for the future. Many thanks to all.
Now, thank you so much, Mr. Suhas, for sharing with us the experience and how you have dealt with all these unforeseen situations with the COVID outbreak. That, well, fortunately, or hopefully in a few months, we will be able to see some movement, because it's necessary to keep the industry moving on. Well, and well, especially cruise sector that has been like hugely impacted. Well, now we all would love to hear your valuable opinions from all the panelists, from your very experienced points of view, a brief comment about how do you all see the future in shipping, and personally, which do you consider that will be the new challenges? For example, instead of teaching shipping physically in colleges and universities and at seminars, should we expect to see more remote lecturing now and in the future? And what other advice would each of you give to the younger generations? And we can start with you, Mr. Bahadir, if you agree.
Thank you so much, and I would like to thank all the panel speakers for their very impressive speeches and their input. I will try to cut it short because we are running out of time. Yes, that is possible. However, we are talking about education. However, shipping is a broad profession. If we are talking about seafarers, today they have to be physically trained, of course, besides the technical training. I'm saying today because in the future we will be fixing, most probably, unmanned, fully autonomous ships. In BIMCO, even we are working on this auto shipment, like autonomous ship management contract, where there will be less demand for seafarers. This is the truth. And on the commercial side, I believe that the school is never enough. In this fierce competition, one has to know and perform a step further than others. You would all agree with me. This is possible by gaining extra qualifications. For instance, becoming a chartered shipbroker by successfully completing the professional qualification examinations and becoming a member of the Institute of Chartered Shipbrokers, and then perhaps being elected as a fellow of the Institute, which will make a chartered shipbroker. Jeffrey has always been my mentor and also my friends. So I will not step into what he will tell us all about the importance of education, but I have two more sentences. I believe that the selective training will be more popular, even though I respect academic education to know the fundamentals of science. Many multinational companies are recruiting professionals on the basis that the employee passes relevant exams of ICS, such as ship operations and management, or tanker chartering or maritime law and so forth. Well, it is always a reliable proof of your knowledge and skills, just like this TOEFL for English or DELF for French and ICS for shipping skills. And the ICS is the only recognized professional body in shipping to deliver such qualifications. When you get such qualification with your academic skills or your qualifications, then it creates a perfect combination. The experience without a strong foundation of techniques can always be risky. And I will now finish with this lovely saying that wisdom doesn't necessarily comes with age. Sometimes age just shows up all by itself. So we have to trust the youngsters. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bahadir. And thanks for that input. Okay, now we can hear Mr. Nikos.
Right. So thanks for a very interesting discussion and a lot of useful information exchanges from the panel of experts. Tackle the future. Well, a lot of education word has been heard, and we have to segregate what is education. There is two types of education. One is the knowledge is articulate and tacit. Articulate knowledge is something that you can learn in universities, people like Jeffrey can put it in our minds. We can find it on internet, and we can also tell others. But there is also the tacit knowledge, which is the empirical, the practical knowledge that we can only learn by practice, by experience, by having a mentor, by doing the nitty-gritties of the work, the small details, or case studies and all that. And I would advise the youngsters, there's a lot of youngsters listening to us right now, that they try to get next to an experienced person. Try to find a mentor, try to absorb as much experience as possible, because unfortunately, with this lockdown and the social distancing and the fact that people are acting like units, they cannot hear the others. They cannot hear the hum and the buzz of the office nowadays. And somehow we are lost in translation with regard to this tacit knowledge and experience. So this is very, very important for the future, because no matter how much artificial intelligence, no matter how much digitalization we will have, the machines will never replace the human feeling. So there will always be a need for personal touch, because we are all humans, we are not machines, and it will take maybe a few generations when the machines themselves are. I wouldn't be surprised if the machines learn to feel as well, but for the time being, they will not. So I would advise the youngsters to keep the ears to the ground, open the eyes, get next to wise and experienced people, and try to absorb as much as possible, and also to feel positive, and not to be not to be distracted by all this negativity which runs around us. Of course, it's like a circle, the circle of life. Things go bad and then they will turn good. It's like the shipping circle. You have low freights, you have the high freight. So all this will be over one day, the difficulties. And I'm being a positive person myself, so I do wish everybody all the best. And we should be looking back at all this ordeal we have all suffered with a smile on our face, because we all learned something from it, and I think we have all adapted to the new life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nikos. Yes, let's keep our attitude very positive to keep moving. Now, we would like to hear Mrs. Katerina Stathopoulou.
Yes, it has indeed been very interesting to hear a lot of all of these views. I'm a very positive person by nature, so I am definitely positive about the future. And I believe the future belongs to the young generation. That we need to help, assist, mentor, like Nico said, and they need to find a mentor or follow people or reach out to people that are there for them to discuss. I'm positive about the future in shipping because it has cycles and we will all go up and down. And it is a roller coaster that we all have passion about. That's why we are in shipping. What I find challenging personally is I find this remote new reality very challenging for me. Maybe because I really care about a face-to-face connection. I think that lecturing remotely or doing video calls or connecting through cameras does not really, it is a good solution for when you can't do anything else because of security. But I think the new reality has to include a face-to-face connection. A camera does not adequately portray the human connection that is there and that needs to be there. Whether it is in the classroom to portray and infuse the young generation, you need to have them in front of you. It's different than when you're doing it over video. The connection and the networking that you get to meet people like Jeff and Marseille probably said earlier, that we have met people in Bahadir and we've turned friends from our professional colleagues. that is very difficult to do over a video. So for me, the biggest challenge going forward is this new reality, this virtual reality. Plus this virtual reality, I believe, and technology has its positives, but it also has its negatives. And I am now addressing mostly the young generation. Technology has made them be very lone riders, alone. The previous generation, I don't like the word old because I don't feel old, and I don't think anybody feels old on this panel. Irrespective of what our ID says, we are not old, okay? We learned to be team players. We grew up to play with children and interact with other peers and friends. This new technology is taking everybody down a solo path. And this is not something that will help our industry and the skills that I was saying before in the way that we need to be. In order for us to be there and be good professionals, like Jeffrey has been saying, we need to be team players. We need to have an open mind. We need to think out of the box. We need to be able to be proactive and not reactive to situations. Business is being part of a team, a professional and being on time and thinking correctly and going an extra mile even though you're not being asked, but you do it because you feel this is the correct thing to do and you're helping the total good or the team is not something that is being well served over a camera or feeling that I can just sit in my house and just do my job. That also does not serve a well-balanced professional and private life. Yes, we may have become more efficient because we don't take longer lunches, but longer lunches led to relationships, led to networks, led to new business, led to new knowledge that we gain from other people's and exchanging ideas. And I don't know how efficient I can be if I work 24/7 and not have anything else. Shipping is a 24/7 business, but it also had a work-life balance included. So a lockdown or a new normality of working remotely, I don't believe will help our psychological balance to be professional and to be effective in what we do. So we need to reach a balance. Again, I like that word. We went from lockdown and now we're going to the other end. Yes, new normality in working conditions. Yes, the younger generation is more agile with this new technology and we are learning more and you are learning other skills. You have the skills of technology, but you need to learn the softer skills of interacting and, for example, reading body language when you talk to somebody. When you sit in front of a camera, you're not really responding, all right? I can talk to you and have you in front of me, and it will be a different response from you looking at me over video. So I believe this is one of our biggest challenges right now. As far as shipping is concerned, we're all veterans. It's a cycle, and we will get through it, and we will meet up with another crisis. It is a different crisis. It is it's a more personal and human crisis than just only business. But we adapt, and we will move forward more improved. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Katerina. And I think that what you're saying is completely true. The face-to-face interaction has no comparison. And hopefully we will see you here in Venezuela soon.
I will try, yes.
Well, now we can move to Mr. Jeffrey Blum. Jeffrey Blum. We would like to hear your opinion.
Thank you so much, and thank you to my co-panelists for setting the scene for my answer as well. I have three main comments. As I already hinted earlier, this is very much a people business. We're all interacting with each other as people, whether as students and lecturers, or young versus more experienced. The idea of mentoring, I think, is an extremely valid point. In fact, I have recently, about 4 months ago, joined Coming Ashore, and the clue is in the name, which is linked with the Marine Society for those who are young, on board, who want to come ashore when they're suitably qualified, or those who find that they don't really want to be on board a ship anymore and they want to know what to do when they come ashore. And some of them are engineers, and some of them are deck officers, some of them are very junior, some of them are slightly more senior, and they have no clue what to do in the commercial world. And so I am one of about 10 mentors in this very new initiative, and I have a number of people who are already asking me to guide them a little bit, and I'm certainly not alone in this. I think that is equally true of those who are already ashore, in other words, the young shipbrokers, precisely as my friend Bahadir mentioned just now. And much of this is to do with networking. I do agree with Katerina that the days of long lunches are over, for sure, and people of my generation, and I'm very much older than you are, we actually managed to get a lot done during these long lunches, and people used to sniff at us and say, well, why on earth are you going to a restaurant from 12 o'clock and you're only coming back to the office at 4? But I brought with me several contracts which were worth a heck of a lot more than weeks of negotiation. So in that sense, it worked rather well. It's very much the personal connection and being a member of a club. And which better professional club to mention than the Institute of Chartered Shipbrokers? And I would add one more thing which wasn't mentioned earlier, and that is the logo of the Institute, which it shares as the same motto or logo of the Baltic Exchange, the words, our word, our bond. Now this is a very powerful tool when you are negotiating and finally agreeing with your principals, or helping your principals to agree with each other, that the spoken word of a broker, or perhaps two brokers, saying thank you, that's a fixture, saying it, means that the two principals are thereby bound to each other in law. This is a hugely privileged position that we as fellows of the Institute, chartered shipbrokers, as Bahadir mentioned, can enjoy, and is not to be taken lightly. Members of the Baltic Exchange and fellows of the Institute can do this, and only they can do this. So we're talking of a very small, very select group of professionals, numbering no more than about 5,500 people worldwide, who are either members of the Baltic Exchange or fellows, not members, fellows of the Institute, or in some cases both. And that is a real honor and a responsibility, an obligation to respect the law and to share with the principals, owners and charterers, that a professional shipbroker's word is legally binding on them, the principals, as well. And that is something that is, I think, often misunderstood by people who simply want to become a shipbroker and think, oh yes, I'll have my qualification. It is a real responsibility, let alone an honor. And in this 100th year, the centenary year of our royal ascent, our royal charter from 1920, it is perhaps even more appropriate to mention this this obligation on those who are, excuse me, involved with the Professional Institute. We started in 1911, and I was present at the centenary of that, obviously in 2011. But we shouldn't forget that we are a royal charter with royal assent, and it bears with it serious responsibility. I have about a minute left, so I want to use my minute to bring in my very dear friend Henry Mitten Mills, and he is able to see you, and you can now see him. He is one of the big gurus of the shipping world in Singapore, and I'm sure I'm going to embarrass him by saying that, but nevertheless, I say. And he has a number of what I call helicopter view ideas of where shipping might well be in the next, say, 5 years. And I think it would be helpful to hear from him briefly now, particularly aimed at the young. Henry, over to you. Can you hear us? And can you
Thank you, Henry, for being also agreed to.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Can you hear him?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, I echo a lot what you say. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
I echo a lot of what's been said. But firstly, let's be very clear that education is not academia.
Jeffrey,
Let's make it practical.
1 second, Henry. Yes.
the connection is not so clear. Perhaps you
1
close
second.
it. You close per you just with the phone near by your
Okay.
speaker.
Henry, we're going to cut your video, but you can carry on talking. Okay, Henry?
All right.
Right. I'm going to, can you
Can you hear me?
can you cut your video as well, please?
No, you can
Can you
make,
hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can hear you.
yep. Close to your speaker, perhaps that's better. Yeah.
Right.
Right. Go.
Okay. No,
Yeah.
what I was just saying was echoing largely what you have been saying, but being very, very clear. Look, shipping is not a science, and I would go further. It's a wonderful profession, but unless it's actually a vocation as well for you, you don't go home 9 to 5. You've got to live, eat, and sleep it. And education is not academia. The mistake we've made in Singapore and more general sense for many, many years. Pieces of paper on the wall doesn't make you any good in shipping. You've really got to be able to apply that knowledge. And that means, yes, mentoring and so on. And there's a great group on LinkedIn, Mentorship, that we started a couple of years ago. And I've been doing this with scholars and graduates in Singapore for a few years. But, you know, for ourselves, and okay, Jeffrey and I, we started pretty much around about the same time. I suspect I'm slightly older than you, unfortunately.
You're not, but okay.
But, you know, unless we learn from history, we're doomed to repeat it. But the onus is on us older people to remain relevant, because unless we're relevant, we've made that difficult. No, it's not so difficult transition from dinosaur to fossil. So I think that, you know, we really have to take this on. But look, this COVID situation has granted us wonderful opportunities as well, because it has acted as an incredible accelerator. Shipping is very slow to change, incredibly to change. I mean, I've got a .com that's actually still running for 17 years now. The level C's fiascos and so on that we had before, it's coming round again with a different set of rules. Back then, we could never have even conceptualized an Uber, let alone built it. And the market is changing. The ability for a ship owner to differentiate, it's zero. And I'm sorry, I think as shipbrokers, we have a big change to make. If you were looking to fix a VLCC or a Capesize bulk carrier, there's only 3 variables. And a computer can do that probably more efficiently than anything else. But we need to get a grip on this because, for instance, for all this digital age, AIS data, I'll give you one quick question. AIS data, the position of a ship, who owns that data?
Yeah.
Because the difference of 2 ships and 3 ships being on position for a cargo is 20% on the freight. Now, if these digital exchanges are going to know where all the ships are in the world and be able to tell all the commodity players exactly where they come from and what the competition is, but hang on, my ship is surely my knowledge. And I have to comply with safety, but who says it should be published to my competitors? Who owns that data, or should the ship owner be paid for that data? We could talk a long, long time, but I do throw that one out there because I really don't know, and I have asked, and I get weird answers, and it's owned by the IMO. Well, I'm sorry, that's not a reasonable enough solution or explanation. Anyway, I've talked too long already. I've taken more than your minute, Jeffrey.
That's fine. Thank you, Henry. That's an interesting other perspective. I would take issue with you with one very small aspect of what you said just now, and that is I do not think that machines will replace human beings. The feel for a market and knowing people, networking, cannot be replicated by a machine. So in that sense, we as a profession are a people profession, not an automated profession. But that aside, I certainly agree with all of your comments. I suspect my time is now up, so I hand you back, but I shall probably be giving my Tutney worth later on. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jeffrey. So I think that we can expect Mr. Henry in another webinar. Actually, very interesting point of view, and it will be a pleasure for us to hear him and even hear you again, Mr. Jeffrey. Well, now I would like to go with Paola Velasco, Mrs. Paola. Your opinions, comments?
Yeah, well, I see the future in shipping more and more submerged on the nature of its processes, but embracing more the globalization on the vastness of its communications. With this outbreak situation, people have understood that it is necessary to bring barriers down, even when we already have access to technology. People at some point were reluctant to make more use of it. Nowadays, we have a closer relationship between companies and institutions thanks to technology. The shipping industry have always been traditionalist. We have always had the need to shake hands and being face to face, which is something that, of course, I agree with the panelists. But for sure, this accelerated adaptation will make us rebuild all of our processes to offer the best of the services. The challenge is to cope as fast as we can with this new rhythm, doing our utmost with the digital tools within our reach, and to quickly feel comfort when using this new way to develop our daily work. Regarding remote lectures, for sure, more lectures will be attended at virtual conference rooms. Nevertheless, a research conducted by the education institutions is pending to assess the feasibility to teach more subjects using this modality, which in either way will offer a great opportunity for people who face difficulties to mobilize to institutions. Finally, my advice to younger generations is to keep on the pursuit of the shipping knowledge. Preparing, getting involved is a key. And if this is your true passion, then go for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Paola. Great, actually. Honestly, the education, it's like the key for everything, and we need to keep on motivated, doing a greater job to increase our knowledge. And yes, last but not least, we will go with Mr. Jean-Francois Suhas, the rock star, as Ansam said.
You also? Then just in 1 minute, I will leave this concern of education, if of course is one of the biggest question, just to say that your generation, I speak about of course the between 30 or less than 40, because you are young ship and young people, is this this concern of environment, especially in shipping, because one part of what we call in France this désamour of our maritime industry is the people, they don't love so much the port, they don't love so much our industry, is that they consider we are completely out of the lines for the pollution, for emission, for the ballast water, etc., etc. Then you really need to be involved in this transition, you know, that when the ship will be back without fossil, you know, without CO2, without NOx, without SOx, and then we will be close to the population, the local population. It will be a new, you know, a new deal with the population. But for the moment, as you imagine, in Venice, in Dubrovnik, in so many parts of the world, they don't want to see any more ships. Of course, there is over-tourism, there is the city overcrowded, but the target is also on the ships, you know. And our industry is it's what we call sometimes the black blood, you know, with this fuel oil, and it was 2 centuries, you know, and we have this big growing, especially in at the end of the 19th and the 20th century, because we have this opportunity, you know, to burn, you know, this crude oil, of course, this fuel oil in our engines. But now we have to reinvent everything, especially for now to be accepted, you know, in the port, and to avoid a great. Of course, it's only 2%. Sometimes it's 2.2 of the global emission, but it's too much for many people, you know, especially for the cruise industry, because it's a pleasure. Then people, they don't say that they need this, you know. But I think it is the biggest challenge for your generation. That is, if we really want that our industry will be loved by the very positive, you know, screen, a good in the population, we have to do that, and we need really the improvement of everything, and the involvement, especially about all the people in the office, at sea, everywhere, in the shipyards, of course, in all the factories, to present, you know, decarbonization in the next decade. It's our major, for me, it's our major challenge for the next decade, and the next decade, on the next one and the other one, to be neutral carbon, you know, very quickly, and especially also with the problem of CO2, but also the problem of NOx and SOx have to be the priority for us. That was my idea, of course, but I am also, of course, the education, and you have, as a pilot, for example, I have training, you know, even at 54 years old, I have training every 2-3 months, you know, in simulation system, digitalization, and then it's very, very important in each job that you consider that you are not the best, and you have still something to learn, and with our colleague and with your environment, it's very, very important also to remain in the human part of our jobs, you know, even as very prices, you know, very experienced job as mine. After 20 years, I still have something to learn every time when I go on a bridge with the captain, you know. I try to do my best, and I try to be an open mind, to create a good relationship with the people. And of course, the digitalization is nice this evening, especially, but we are still, you know, coordination with humans on a bridge and everywhere is for a long time, I suppose, even if the artificial intelligence is coming and many things, yeah, etc. But we have still a good many years to have this combination of humans and machines.
I'm sorry, Jean-Francois, may I ask you something?
Yes, of course.
Can I call you tomorrow to establish the old ship together? You know, in contrary to the young ship, because you are talking about youngsters and all. So I will call you tomorrow for that, okay?
Yeah, of course, of course.
But you invite us afterwards.
Yeah. And the medium old also, not
May
only
I-
the old.
Please, may I join you?
With a white barb and white hair only. This is the card for the insurance.
Well, I mean, I think it was great to hear all your inputs, and I will now go to Q&A part, but we're going to take really few questions. But before that, I want to say thanks to our partner, Voice Radio in New York, who actually now broadcast this webinar and actually will do so in the future. So thanks for that. And we have really a lot of questions, I would say, but as we're really out of time, we're going to take few questions. We're apologizing for that. And we're suggesting to all of you, if that's okay, or if you would like, you can address your rest of the questions via email. You can address it to turkey@youngship.com or also ICS, or also you can find, I think, our speakers profile on Google. But in case not, you can definitely send your questions to turkey@youngship.com. You can find our email there, and yeah, we're apologizing for that, but it's quite late, I'm aware. And I want to say,
Sinem, I would strongly recommend that only one email address should be used, otherwise there might be chaos. So only.
So if you would like, you can send your questions to turkey@youngship.com, and we're going to refer this to our speakers, and we're going to reply to you as soon as possible. But before that, I would like to take a few questions which are generally addressed to all speakers, so just to not discriminate one to another. And Mr. Hamza was asking 2 questions general to all speakers, so I'm going to take one of them. He's asking, how do you think the practical educations on board will go on this session? How will maritime students will complete their education unless completing their trainings on board, which is really an interesting question indeed. And I'm asking to our speakers if there's anyone who would like to contribute this point.
If I may, let me pitch in as first, and I'm quite sure my colleagues will have something else to say as well, but I'm very much at the heart of this education for the Institute of Chartered Shipbrokers and various universities and seminars and colleges and so on. And the word is how will practical education continue in this season, season being the academic year, with the Institute's exams coming up in July, having been postponed from May, and then again in November. A lot of the students to whom I speak all the time are seriously worried. How are they going to continue with their lessons to learn other than online? There are 3 ways that I suggest to them that they can learn. In fact, I had conversations with 3 of those students literally this afternoon. One is, of course, to continue their training online with lecturers such as the people present, including me. And we're simply holding our classrooms not physically in a classroom at a university or somewhere else. It is via this medium. Secondly, read around the subject. There is a huge amount of free information out there. The news articles, a number of them are not, you do not need to subscribe to them and spend money if you don't want to. There's a lot of information out there which is very, very useful for you to build into your basic knowledge and then therefore to include in your answers in the exams whenever they may be. And by reading, of course, I include also reading the textbooks, the Institute of Chartered Shipbrokers textbooks, obviously for those exams. And there are plenty of other textbooks which are bigger, some people might even say more accurate, certainly fuller, and they are certainly worth looking at. Either borrow from a library if you wish, a virtual library, an online library, or perhaps order them, and then you'll have your own copy. And the third version I would strongly recommend is exactly the point that was made earlier by a number of us, and that is using a senior colleague as a mentor and learn by telephone call if necessary, or a little in-house video conference within the company, and let the older ones talk to the younger ones, and this is how this and this should be done, and this is how I used to do it and it's still valid today, and this is how the market should be looking, and this is what you can do about it. And that's a really good way to learn as well. Exactly as my dear friend Henry mentioned earlier, education is not just about being academic. Of course, that is an important issue too, but it's speaking to those who have the experience, and mentoring, I think, is quite a useful tool in that regard. That would be the way I would answer this question.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Jeffrey. And then I'm going to take another question, which is also addressed to all speakers. And if you don't mind, then we can go to the closing remarks and conclude our today's webinar. So Mr. Oknar is asking, can impact of economic downturn to low-income countries increase the risk of piracy in the long run? And I want to ask to our speakers if there is anyone who would like to answer this point.
I'd like to say that piracy is irrespective. We've had issues of piracy around the world and in shipping. And I think it is not tied up with the development of the countries or the GDP of the countries. Mm-hmm. Piracy is a bigger issue, and it's based on different concerns of why piracy we have more piracy attacks or less piracy attacks. So I would say no, they're not. In my opinion, they're not connected. I would not see that as a reason.
I agree.
Yeah. So I want to ask to our speakers if there's anything else you want to cover before wrapping up, or are we all good? Are we all good? Yep.
I'm good.
Great.
Thank you.
I'm apologizing for not answering or not addressing the questions that you asked to our speakers, but since the time is a little bit late, if you don't mind, you can address your questions, as I said, to our email, which is turkey@youngship.com, and we'll be happy to forward your questions to our speakers and get back to you as soon as possible. So I want to say thank you again for everyone for joining today's webinar. It was a pleasure for me to be with you all here today with amazing speakers. And as I said before, I want to thank again Mr. Bahadir, ICS Turkey, for organizing this joint event together. And I mean, we had, I think in my opinion, had a special event today. I want to say thank you, Efaristo, for our Greek speakers. Merci, muchas gracias, and çok teşekkür ederiz.
Thank you.
Thank you. Also, I would like to thank to all the speakers. You have been spending so much efforts and putting too much input. And special thanks to beautiful ladies from YoungShip. Really, they did the whole technical infrastructure, and it worked really perfectly. Special thanks to the ladies.
Thank you.
I'm wishing you a nice evening to all of you.
Yeah.
Enjoy your evening.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
One question. Sinem, one question. Before this closes, can you copy all the chat and all the questions? Because I've tried to and I can't, but maybe you can as a host.
Yeah.
That's a great idea, yes.
Yes.
I think, Maria, we can do that. And I'm saying again to our attendees, of course, that they stayed with us for the whole evening. And we really hope you find this webinar useful. And I think we learned that from our speaker's speech, life's roughest storms prove the strength of our answers. And I really appreciate all of you being here with us today. And as I said, you can feel free to send any questions via our email. Thanks again. And we'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Thank you so much. Bye.